Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Amid the ongoing US tariff war, Indian officials say a date for Vladimir Putin's state visit to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi is close to being finalised. Trump has slapped 50% tariffs on India, citing their continued purchase of Russian oil, which he says is funding the Russian war machine in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia has said that the US has made a quite acceptable offer for talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, with the UAE being considered for the meeting expected within days. Putin says interest in the meeting is mutual after it was confirmed by the Kremlin. This comes as Vladimir Putin says he has nothing against meeting Ukrainian Prime Minister Volodymyr Zelensky, but says conditions for the talks have not been met. Meanwhile, Zelensky says there is still no public response from Russia on their readiness for a real ceasefire. German officials have warned that US tariffs could distort global markets while providing updates on US-EU trade relations. It comes after President Trump said billions of dollars in tariffs are now flowing into the US after his August 7th deadline. Families of Israeli hostages are protesting from a boat, calling on an end to the war in Gaza amid potential expansion from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Meanwhile, Egypt is sending 1.5 million tons of aid to the enclave amid concerns over a worsening humanitarian crisis. This comes as suspected vandals have defaced the Paris office of Israel's national airline El Al with slogans including Free Palestine sprawled across the building. France's transport minister and Israel's ambassador to Paris have condemned the move. France is continuing to battle raging wildfires which have already claimed one life and swept through more than 16,000 hectares of land. July 2025 was the third hottest July on record globally, with extreme weather events becoming more common and continuing to wreak havoc worldwide. And Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Tehran fully supports Hezbollah's decisions as Lebanon considers a plan to disarm the group. Araghchi says Hezbollah has rebuilt itself after last year's war with Israel. But we start as US President Donald Trump has imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian goods, bringing total duties on some products to 50%, among the highest levied on any US trading partner. Washington says the move is a direct response to India's continued imports of Russian oil, despite Washington's warnings. The new tariffs take effect on effective 21 days after August the 7th, and are expected to impact Indian exports worth billions, this including textiles, footwear, gems and jewellery. Trump has not ruled out similar actions against other countries, including China, which also buys oil from Russia. However, he had said that it could happen to other countries as well. The tariff tensions comes just as India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, said that the Russian president will visit India soon. This would be Putin's first visit to the country since the Russia-Ukraine war began in 2022. While US President Donald Trump's new 39% tariff on Swiss goods is stirring sharp reactions in Bern, with leaders describing the move as a major disruption to bilateral ties. The Swiss president suggested it was possibly not an accident that the tariff rate nearly matched Switzerland's $38.5 billion trade surplus with the US, adding that Trump viewed the surplus as a loss. According to the Swiss president, Switzerland does not share this view. Despite US pressure, the Swiss president reaffirmed commitment to the F-35 fighter jet deal, saying if we don't stick with the F-35 deal, then we don't have any air defence. Switzerland's business minister also described the tariff decision as having massively increased negotiation pressure, while emphasising that the US remains an important partner. Well, of course, the overall trade situation is one that started on April the 2nd, Trump's Liberation Day, as he termed it. This, of course, saw an announcement of tariffs on around 70 countries. Deadlines came and went, but Trump has now enacted higher tariffs on many trading partners that were unable to strike a deal with the US administration. This is impacting nations like the ones we've mentioned, India, Switzerland, but other partners as well. And of course, the situation for India is a tense one, with an ongoing conversation around purchasing Russian oil and a potential for other countries that will be hit with these tariffs. Discussions between Swiss and US officials have been taking place. And of course, hope from Switzerland's side is that these rates will come down. To provide some context, the European Union agreed a deal with the Trump administration, which is seeing tariffs of up to 15%. The UK also in Europe facing just 10% tariffs after a deal between Keir Starmer and President Trump. A lot to look at with tariffs, and a topic that we will continue to keep monitoring and bring you all updates from. But moving on now, and as US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are preparing to meet in the coming days, Putin's special envoy Kirill Dmitriev has said that the dialogue between the two countries is going to be historic. He has further said that the meeting between the leaders is an opportunity to convey Russia's position to the US president. Let's listen.
К созидательному и конструктивному диалогу с Соединенными Штатами. И, безусловно, тот саммит между руководством России и США, который планируется, надеемся, на следующей неделе, это, безусловно, может стать важным историческим событием, когда позиция России будет четко донесена до президента Трампа. Мы также отмечаем то, что идет очень важный диалог с Соединенными Штатами Америки по различным направлениям. И очень многие противники России пытаются сорвать этот диалог, пытаются ему помешать, пытаются дезинформировать руководство Соединенных Штатов о различных фактах.
Well, the meeting follows Trump's remarks that he was hopeful of holding a joint meeting with both Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump has warned Moscow that unless a ceasefire is reached by Friday, it will face broader sanctions. Well, joining us is John Rosamundo to discuss all of the implications relating to this. He is the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical analyst, joining us live from Washington, D.C. John, as always, it is a pleasure to speak with you on the programme today. There is a lot for us to discuss, but let's start with this potential meeting that could come within days, according to officials. How significant do you think this meeting really is in ending the war between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, it offers President Trump an opportunity to get face-to-face with Vladimir Putin and to lay out his frustrations with the Russian president's refusal to agree to a ceasefire and bring the war to an end. President Trump campaigned on ending the war. Rumors suggest that President Trump will offer a ceasefire instead of peace, a de facto recognition of the areas of Ukraine occupied by Russia as under Russian domination, and a few other things, and allowing the U.S. to continue to arm Ukraine. But I think that it's going to be very difficult to get Putin to budge on anything.
John, there has been a comment from US politicians, experts and thinkers surrounding this shifting US-Russia relationship. We've heard people suggest that Putin has potentially been pulling the wool over Donald Trump's eyes at points. Trump himself has used stronger language when referring to Putin and, of course, shifting his stance from we're trying to work towards peace diplomatically to putting pressure on to shortening deadlines. But could this be another case of Putin potentially saying one thing to Trump, but then doing something different in reality?
Well, I think that the number one thing to recognize is that Putin has no desire to pull out or to show anything that could result in the perception that he lost the war. So I think that Putin will continue. However, Trump will lean on him to end the fighting.
And John, let's look at a potential meeting between Zelensky, Putin and Trump. Of course, that's something that Zelensky himself has been calling for. Vladimir Putin talking about the certain circumstances not yet being right for that meeting. In your opinion, could that be another delay tactic?
Well, I think that the number one thing that Vladimir Putin does not want to do is to legitimize Volodymyr Zelensky's government. I mean, the propaganda describes him as a dictator, works at delegitimizing him. So I think that Putin will refrain likely from face-to-face meeting with Zelensky.
And John, we've heard there a Russian official refer to this meeting when it takes place as being historic when it does. What do you think they're referring to?
Well, I mean, we've never had a major war that was mediated by an American president since the Russo-Japanese War of 1905, in which Theodore Roosevelt negotiated an end to that war. So I'm hopeful that President Trump will be able to talk some sense into Vladimir Putin to end the fighting.
John, where does this go next? Of course, that Trump deadline for Russia before it faces potential sanctions is hanging over. Do you think that might be delayed if this meeting takes place after that date? And what does this say about Trump's ability to stick to his word on these deadlines? Western Europe, Western allies of Ukraine as well, have been pushing the US to put these sanctions in. Do you think this could cause discontent between Ukrainian allies and the US as well?
Well, let's put it this way. President Trump is a man of pragmatism. He uses threats to try to get concessions from other sides. It's something he has been doing since he was in the real estate development business in New York. It's part of his art of the deal. So, he goes and ramps things up and then tries to get concessions. If he gets concessions, he dials back. If he fails, he increases the sanctions.
Yes, and John, finally, I just want your opinion on this. What do you think will come from this meeting, and do you think this will actually lead to peace?
Well, I think that face-to-face discussions are the best way to do diplomacy. I think that the summits that we had in the Soviet era between American presidents and Soviet leaders reduced the global temperature politically. So hopefully having Trump talking with Putin and engaging him will get him to get some sense and end the conflict.
John, you will be staying with us as we take our sights away from the Russia-Ukraine conflict and US intervention towards the Middle East. An aid was airdropped over northern Gaza earlier today, as close to 200 Palestinians have reportedly died of starvation in Gaza since the war began. Nearly half of them have been children, that according to Gaza's health ministry. Meanwhile, Egyptian government has stated that it continues efforts to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza amid ongoing shortages caused by several different blockades. An aid convoy carrying 1.5 million tons of food and supplies is en route to the territory, coordinated by the Egyptian government and civil society. However, many trucks have been blocked, reportedly at the Israeli-controlled Kerem Shalom crossing, with only a limited number allowed through. The Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza remains open, but only for passenger movement, restricting goods delivery. Well, John, thank you for staying with us. Of course, this is a topic that we discuss on a daily basis. Some figures coming from Gazan officials. We must acknowledge that they aren't validated by any other party, but nearly 100 children dying from starvation Several world leaders have spoken about the situation in Gaza and are looking towards ways in which aid can get to civilians that aren't associated with Hamas. Do you think Israel is doing enough?
Well, why anyone pays attention to numbers put out by the Hamas propaganda ministry is beyond me. There's no way to independently verify anything that it says. You know, if Hamas were to release the hostages tomorrow, all this would end. Hamas instead chooses to victimize the Palestinian people by holding on to those hostages. Now you have reports that Benjamin Netanyahu plans to occupy all of Gaza due to this in order to get the hostages released.
Yes, and John, let's look at Hamas before we talk about that potential expansion from Israeli military forces. Do you think that enough onus is being put on Hamas in this situation? And what more can be done diplomatically from countries like Egypt, Qatar, and potentially other Arab states?
Well, I think that they should be sanctioning Hamas. I mean, Qatar is the number one supporter of Hamas after Iran. Hamas's other external leaders outside Gaza are there. Israel could be putting more pressure on Hamas to release these hostages. I think the Egyptians could do likewise, but Hamas is stubborn, intransigent, and so forth. One thing that Qatar could do is to extradite the Hamas leaders to the United States to stand trial for the murder of American citizens on October 6th.
And John, let's now look at what you alluded to there in relation to reports suggesting that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to look to occupy Gaza. We know after the breakdown in that initial ceasefire, Israel have stepped up their military action within the Gaza Strip, but it hasn't necessarily led to any more of the hostages being released. A two-part question. Is this putting the lives of hostages at risk if Hamas feel like they are going to be defeated? And also, what is this going to do potentially to Israel standing on the global stage with so much condemnation about the situation in Gaza already at play?
Well, let's put it this way. The fate of the hostages is in Hamas's hands regardless. The most ridiculous thing is holding it against Israel for defending itself and engaging in the same sorts of counter-terrorist activities that the Iraqis engaged in Mosul, that the United States engaged in Fallujah in 2004, that the coalition engaged in against Raqqa. So I think that the international community needs to be quiet, step aside, and to let the Israelis do what they can to rescue these hostages. And if they're killed, it's on Hamas, it's not on Israel.
John, thank you ever so much for your time on both of those topics. Of course, discussion around the situation in Gaza, but also the next steps in a hope for peace. We'll bring all of those to you. But we head to Europe once again, and southern France is battling its worst wildfire since 1949 for a third straight day after flames erupted on Tuesday in the village of Rebouat near the Spanish border. The blaze has burned over 16,000 hectares, destroyed dozens of homes and killed at least one person in Saint-Laurent de la Cabresi. This is what Christian Puget, prefect of Aude, has said.
Oui, c'est la bonne expression et c'est la bonne attitude. Rester sur le qui-vive, écouter les consignes qui sont données par la préfecture et au plus près par les pompiers et les gendarmes, parce que, encore une fois, la bataille n'est pas encore terminée. Le feu peut repartir de manière plus importante. Donc on a encore quelques jours avant de pouvoir indiquer que le feu sera totalement éteint.
Well, to provide some context on quite how quickly this situation has developed, in just 12 hours, the fire spread across 11,000 hectares, roughly the size of Paris, and has now engulfed an area 1.5 times larger. Thousands of firefighters are battling the flames, which have slowed but remain dangerous. Around 2,500 homes lost power with no confirmation of restoration. Let's once again listen in to Christian Puget.
Clair, l'ensemble de la flotte aérienne disponible était sur l'Aude. L'ensemble des colonnes de renfort qui viennent de partout en France, y compris de corps, je l'ai dit, sont présentes. Il y a une solidarité nationale qui s'exprime de manière très claire et c'est à la fois naturel et bien évidemment nécessaire. Parcouru. Alors on est en train de pointer, vous savez qu'il y a toujours une différence entre les hectares parcourus et les hectares brûlés, donc on a ces éléments-là, et puis on commence déjà à rentrer sur l'organisation du comptage de l'après, c'est-à-dire sur ces 16 000 hectares, combien de surfaces agricoles, et dans la surface agricole, combien de surfaces de vignes, puisque vous savez qu'il y a eu un échange entre le Premier ministre et les viticulteurs sur ces questions-là. Donc on devrait être sur le périmètre du feu aujourd'hui. Bon, le chiffre n'est pas encore totalement calé, donc il est susceptible de bouger, mais de l'ordre de 800 à 900 hectares de vignes dans le périmètre du
President Emmanuel Macron said all national resources are mobilised. Prime Minister François Bayrou called it a catastrophe on an unprecedented scale. Meteorologists warn of rising heat in the south this weekend, with temperatures nearing 40 degrees Celsius and high wildfire risk along the Mediterranean coast. Well, joining us to discuss this situation that remains difficult and uncertain, Dr. Satoru Nagao, a fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining us live from Tokyo, Japan. Dr. Nagao, of course, harrowing scenes that we've been showing on the screen of a situation that is so large now, 1.5 times larger than the size of Paris. Just to put it into context, while the casualty numbers are low at the moment, huge impacts to so many people. A question is going to be asked now on the global stage about what can be done to try and limit these wildfires. We've seen them in LA, we've seen them in Japan, we've seen them in South Korea. This is something that seems to be becoming more common, and it almost seems like a problem that can't be solved as it spreads so quickly.
Yes, it's a possibility. It's a background reality of such kind of the fire breakout and the spreading so fast is related with climate change in the global scale. Because in this area of the France, because of the windy, because of the dry climate, fire breakout after that spread very fast pace. But at the same time, you have already mentioned many places in the world, fire is spreading in many places compared with the past more often, and it is new normal now. So that's why there is a possibility this is linked with temperature rise in the global scale, and so that's why climate change is a matter of concern. But at the same time, this climate change, if it is true, that is long-term change in the wider scale. So current national-based system is not enough to deal with. So international system is the only way to deal with, but this is not enough. The last 2 decades or 3 decades, what they have done proved it. So that's why under such kind of new common, still nation is compete with other nation, and so which nation will deal with more proper to is one of the aspects of the who will be the winner in the new age. So that's why the current international system cannot deal with this situation. If so, the nation need to deal with the new situation themselves. That is a matter of concern. And in this case, a new budget is needed. Reorganization of the government system is needed. Everything is needed. But who will be the winner is rely on their reform.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this is the current situation, I believe.
Yes, and Dr. Nagao, as we bring an end to this discussion, let's look at the impacts on France. 2,500 homes losing power, people, of course, having to flee in these affected areas, a mobilisation of national emergency services with as many personnel on the ground as possible. How will this impact France, not just in the short term, but also moving forward?
Of course, this is a big fire, but at the same time, still the casualty is very limited because of the France's rapid reaction. And that's why the France is dealing with this issue relatively properly. But at the same time, there is a possibility this will be one of the incidents France will face, or other country will face in the as a wildfire. So that's why how to deal with wildfire, how to deal with the new scale of the national disaster is a matter of concern of each country, I think.
Dr. Nagao, as always, it is a pleasure to have you on the programme. A shame, of course, that we're talking about such a tragic incident, but we look forward to speaking to you the next time. Hopefully it's something slightly more positive. But that is all we have time for. We'll be back soon with more of the latest from across the world. Thank you.